Hello everybody, welcome! Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm also in a different space because I needed a specific space for my working that we're going to be doing today, but obviously from the title of the video, we're doing a money spell together. I'm going to show you my recipe, feel free to change it as you need. Nothing is ever set in stone in magic. But I wanted to sort of explain what I was going to be doing for some of my stuff before we really got into it, because there are a lot of extra parts to it that sometimes people don't go over, and because I want to be very detail oriented, I'm going to go over some of those with you. So, number one, I dressed myself up in a lot of things because I wanted myself to also represent part of the spell. So I put on these a little bit fancier earrings than normal. They've got some fake jewels in them that I wanted to represent real jewels. All of it's going to be very representational. I have a gold necklace on with some extra bits in it to make me feel fancy. I have some bangles that make me feel fancy. And the location's also important. We're in a workroom. We're in the workroom because my money spell is going to be related to the work that I do in here specifically. I wanted the environment to play a part, I wanted my appearance to play a part, and my ingredients will play a part. So I'm going to explain all of those to you as we go through them. But if you want to see how I made this beautiful money bowl, stick around. Alright, hello everyone and welcome to the main portion of the video. So for this spell, I'm going to walk you through every single item that I use, and the main component is going to start with this green jar. Now I've used this jar before for other money bowl spell work and it worked really well, so I cleansed it, cleaned it out, and I'm going to be reusing it again because I just happen to like the container. This is something I got from the dollar store a long time ago, so I'm going to stress the point that you do not need to spend a bunch of money on your spells. So, step one. I like to light a candle, usually just a small tea light, so that if I need to light anything else, like incense or whatever, I have the fire available to do that. So, step one, I cleanse it, just in case it's picked up anything since the last time I cleansed. So this is a cedar bundle that one of my roommates made me, who's also a witch. So we're gonna cleanse the outside and the inside. All of my other materials have been cleansed before this, so everything else I'm gonna be able to add just straight to the working. I like to think of things very metaphorically in my workings, so I like to lay a good solid foundation in a very literal sense, and since I think of these types of spells as growing, I also want to grow them as if I would grow a plant. So I start with rocks in the bottom and some soil on top of that. A lot of these rocks were just a big container that my boyfriend had that we sorted through, and this one in particular is something that has a lot of flecks of sparkly bits. I believe it might be mica, so I decided to add those in because it will come into play later with other elements that we add. I'm gonna lay in our base of rocks. Careful because the container is glass, so you don't want to break it. But you do want to make sure the bottom is nice and covered. I also have some of these more quartz type crystals. They might be quartzite, not actually fully clear quartz, but they will help with protecting and keeping the work clear. So now that that foundation of rocks is laid, I'm going to grab my soil and scoop some in. Just a little bit. I don't want to fill too much of this container up, but just enough to cover the rocks and then add a softer base. And in this sense, this is something I got from Appalachian folk magic, where you don't ever want your money to hit rock bottom. So you want to lay a softer foundation so they never hit the bottom of the container. So I have my trowel full of soil. This may even be too much. We're going to see. Carefully adding it in so I don't spill too much. You want to make sure you push it around so it's not all just in one side. So I will need a little bit more. There's lots of fresh things. This is all from nature. There's lots of bits. It's just potting soil, but there are roots and things in here that got mixed in, so it adds to that growth. And since my hands are small, I can stick them in there and pat down this soil. So I've laid the foundation, and this is where the working for me really begins. So I have 2 candles for 2 of my deities that I work with, and I will be asking them to help me and to bless this working that I'm doing. So I will light their candles, and I will say a small prayer for them to help me with the working. Now, if you don't work with deities, or maybe you work with ancestors instead, you could ask your ancestors for help with this. Any deities that you work with, you can ask for help with this. You don't have to. This is just an optional step that I like to do because I personally do deity work. So these candles will get set aside and they'll be with me in the working even if they are off screen. I just don't want them to clutter up the working space because I only have so much right here. This is a prosperity oil that I made myself. It has a whole bunch of ingredients. I won't be able to list them all offhand, but it includes things like goldenrod, curly dock, some cinnamon, some bay leaves, lots of stuff. So my base was just my regular old household oil. I shook it up for about 2 weeks every single day, added my intention to it, and so now I use this anytime I need to anoint something for money or just general prosperity. So I will be doing that 2 different times throughout this. So I want to start it off with that to let everything else enter through it, and then I will seal it with that same oil. I'll clap my hands together to wake it up because it's just on my 2 fingers. Let everything that passes through this ring bring with it prosperity. So I'll set this aside. I'm going to leave it open because I'll be using it again soon. Salt. So salt is not only protective and cleansing, but it is also known historically for being very precious. For a long, long time, salt was very expensive because we didn't have ways to get it around very easily. It was just considered very, very pricey, much like many spices around the world were until very recent years. So salt for me is both protective and good for prosperity, good for money. I'm gonna sprinkle a small circle around the outer rim of the inside of the dirt. I'll be saying my own invocations while I'm doing my workings. I will just simply make them quiet because it is very personal and it's not going to be the same for everybody, so I don't want you needing to go off my example. Whatever wording works best for you is what you should be using. Next, I really like using basil for business. It's a great herb that I've used for this many times before, and I've always thought I've gotten good results from it, so it is sort of my go-to when it comes to money magic. I wouldn't call it my secret weapon, but it is one of my favorite items to add into my money workings because it grows everywhere here, and that would be goldenrod. Now, goldenrod is this beautiful gold flowers. They spring up and they sort of wilt over a little bit, so you'll see lots of tall stalks with these. We see them especially along the highway a lot, but they were just in my neighborhood, so I plucked a few on my walk to the grocery store earlier, and so I'm going to use this exactly as it is and add it to my money bowl. And I'm, in a sense, going to plant it in the soil. I'm going to have it sticking straight up and then having other things that I set in there around it. Don't burn yourself on candles, be careful. So I'm not someone who works with crystals a whole lot. They're just not generally something that I vibe with. They're just not a tool that I use. If you like crystals, I have a few that I do like to work with, specifically for money magic. Normally I'll use aventurine, but I didn't really feel it today. Today I've gone with some pyrite, some false citrine, it's actually heat-treated amethyst, and a piece of a hematite ring that has protected me. So this will in part be for protecting the workings, and since it's metallic, it looks a bit like coins and money to me. That's what it reminds me of. And the pyrite, looking like gold, is going to remind me specifically of gold and money. So that's what I'm going to be using them for in this working. A note on citrine. So you'll know true citrine from false citrine, which would be heat-treated amethyst, by the coloration and whether or not it has these white bits on the bottom. So regular amethyst will have these white bits on the bottom and then comes up into its color, but when you heat treat it, it will turn a very, very warm gold. When it's very firm in color, when it's very bright and strong, that's when it's heat treated amethyst. Real citrine is a lot more diluted and clear. You would imagine it to just be one full color, a bit like regular clear quartz, so that's how you'll know the difference. I like to use false citrine still for mostly the form of color magic, so I like to use the yellow sort of the same way that I do with the pyrite to represent gold and money. So I charge them individually for their intentions and I set the other two off to the side. I'm going to carefully place them around. Next is a piece of a sand dollar. So much like representational magic works for other things, because this is literally called a dollar, a sand dollar, I use this in money magic to represent money. So this goes straight in with everything else as a whole chunk. And since this is bigger, I'm gonna press it down a little bit into that soil so it sticks straight up. More important than, I would argue, any other part of this entire spell work is real, actual coins. So, you know that phrase, you have to spend money to make money? I really invest myself into that phrase. You have to spend money on equipment, you have to spend money on programs, you have to spend money on training and schooling most of the time. So I am quote unquote spending money to make money. So I will add 7 pennies and 7 quarters into my jar, and that money will build on itself to bring money into me. I spend the money to make the money. Pennies are also considered pretty lucky, so I want to be able to bring in luck as well as real tangible money. I also drop the coins in a clockwise direction so that I bring in. Clockwise is to bring in, counterclockwise is to bring out. So everything that I do is going to be in a clockwise motion. So once again, we're going to seal it with the prosperity oil. Clap to wake it up. And my final step is to protect the working. I really like sandalwood for protection. I also really like the way the incense smells. So I will light the incense, let it burn up a little bit. And I use this both to protect it from anything that may try to harm it and to protect it as in to seal it in. I make it a protective container to seal in all of the essence so that it all stays together and it all works together. I also will let it burn for a little bit and let some of the ashes fall inside so that it adds to it in that way as well. So it is both on the outside and on the inside. Everything is protected in all directions. For jar spells and things like that, you may want to refresh them every now and again. So there are a couple of ways that you can do that. And there's a reason specifically that I have this open mouth jar. There is no lid to it, there never has been. So I like to use open mouth jars so that I can continually add to them to sort of re-up that energy. I can add more coins, or if I get a couple of dollars, I might throw the actual dollars in there. I could throw in more goldenrod, more sand dollar pieces, anything that I think that might help to re-up it. One thing I also like to do is I will use cinnamon sticks. Cinnamon is great in money spells, is great for abundance, it's also great for speed. So if I feel that it needs a little bit of a boost, or maybe something isn't happening as quickly as I want it to, I will take a cinnamon stick and I will stir both the outside and the inside rim of the spell so that everything gets stirred up together and the energy around it gets stirred up as well, and I send that out into the universe. So I will stir it clockwise to bring in, and then I will bring it up and send it away, sort of to send that strand out from this to connect it out to whatever connections I want to make for bringing in that money. You can light candles on top of your jar or near it or in front of it, which is something that I'll also do. I may work it in conjunction with other spells. I even have one here that will be working in conjunction with it. If they are of the appropriate size, you could set it on top and have that sort of work together. You could do the opposite. In my case, that won't work. This bottom is a little bit smaller than this lid is, so it would slide straight inside. But I could set perhaps 2 cinnamon sticks on top and then set this on the top. Or if I want to work them in conjunction, I could light that candle and have it be for this and light the candle on top of this spell so that they work together. The energies will mix. You can do a whole lot of stuff. Those are just a couple of options that I like to do. If you have other things that you enjoy doing for your spells to sort of re-up them or to add the energy, you can even just meditate in front of them. It can be that simple. So if you feel you need a little extra boost, you can add more of your ingredients in, you can do a couple of those things that I mentioned, and hopefully it works for you. If you guys happen to use my money bowl recipe, let me know, show it off, tag me on Instagram. I hope to hear back from you guys soon, and blessed be.